Hey Techno Studs, let's talk about Neighbor Discovery Protocol and how it applies to routers, specifically about router solicitation and router advertisements. What we're going to be covering in this video is we're going to talk about Neighbor Discovery Protocol and multitasking, just a real quick review. Then we're going to talk about router solicitation and router advertisements. We'll talk about some of the options that come with those router advertisements. And then we'll wrap things up by talking about some of the periodic updates that come out. When we're talking about router solicitation and router advertisements, we're talking about ICMP packets that get sent out, and those are the type 133 and 134. It's something that we've discussed in a prior video, so I won't get real in-depth into it. Just know that we are talking about the router solicitation and router advertisements. Another concept that we've talked about before in the past is this idea of multicasting and different addresses that come up with multicasting. The one that we're going to be talking about with this is the FF02::2. This is going out to all routers. So the routers will subscribe to this group. So when something gets sent out to this FF02::2, then it's being sent to all of the routers on the network. And in this case, this IPv6 address has to have a associated MAC address with it. So when it actually goes out, the MAC layer or the layer 2 address is going to be this 33-3300000002. So that's the associated MAC address that is associated with this layer 3 IPv6 address. When a device connects to the network, we're going to use this desktop as an example. We already know that it has a MAC address and that it will create a link local address to communicate onto the network. From there, it can derive a solicited node multicast address and an associated layer 2 MAC address with that. And so this is what's going to be generated. And the same thing is going to go true for routers that join a network. It's going to create very similar sets of information with that as well. So here's a little scenario here where we have this computer is set up with this MAC address, link local address, the solicited node multicast address, and the layer 2 multicast address. And then this router is set up right here with this information right here. But what needs to happen is if this device wants to communicate out to the rest of the world, it's going to need a global unicast address, a GUA. So it's got to somehow come up with this. And we've already talked about how it already can create automatically, it can create a interface part of that GUA, the last 4 hextets on that address, but it needs to somehow create or come up with, or it needs to know what the first 4 hextet of the address is going to be. And one way it can do that is through Neighbor Discovery Protocol. And what it's going to do is it's going to send out a router solicitation. So it's going to send out that router solicitation. As we mentioned, it's a ICMP type 133 that's going to be sent out. And what it's going to do is, let's talk about the addresses, both the layer 2 addresses and the layer 3 addresses that it's going to be sent out on. So the layer 2 source is going to be the MAC address from the device sending out the router solicitation. So this device, from a layer 2 perspective, this will be the source right here. And then the source layer 3 is going to be the link local address right here. So that's the link local address that it's going to send out. And then the destination is going to be that multicast that we talked about that the router will join. So when this device was connected into the switch, it let the switch know that it is a router and it wants to join the 33:33 or 33 colons or dashes 00 000002. And so then whatever comes into this switch on that that's destined for that MAC address will be sent to this router. So that is the destination layer 2 address, and the associated layer 3 address will be in the destination layer 3. So that will be FF02::2. So that will be the layer 3 destination right there. So that is the router solicitation packet or frame that gets sent out from this machine. From a prior video, we also talked about how what the router does is it has a reply back that is going to be a router advertisement that's going to be sent back. And that's going to be on a ICMP packet type 134. So that's the type of ICMP packet that's sent back. Let's take a look at the addresses that are going to be sent out from this router, what the layer 2 and layer 3 source and destination addresses are going to be. So the layer 2 source MAC address is going to be its own MAC address right there. So that's going to be sent out. And then the layer 3 address that this router will send out is the layer 3 link local address is going to be on there. So those are the sources right there. And the destination, from a destination standpoint, is going to be actually a multicast. The multicast that it's going to send out is going to be 33, 33, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 2. Excuse me, not 2, it's going to be 1. And if you recall, that multicast address right there is something that all nodes are going to be a subscriber from. So this is going to go out to all of the nodes. So when it hits the switch, it's going to go to all of the destinations. And from a layer 3 standpoint, it's going to be the associated FF02::1 that's going to be sent out. And so all devices is going to get this. So all devices is actually going to hear that information. So they're all going to get that information sent out to it. And that way they can refresh that information if they need to refresh that information. So that is the router advertisements. So what kind of information goes out on this type 134? Well, there are several options that you can have. So certain options might include the prefix information. So that's the information we first discussed that this machine is trying to get, is that information at the beginning of the address of what network it's located on, the first 4 hextets. So it's going to get that first 4 hextets. So another thing that it could be asking for or needing is the DNS server. So this router right here will send information out on what DNS server to use. Another thing that could be sent out is something like the MTU, or the maximum transmission unit. So devices on the network know about how big the packets are supposed to be, or the maximum size of those packets, what it cannot go beyond. So it will also, if there's some sort of route information that needs to be sent out, it will send out route information. So things like the default gateway of where, if you're going to this route, then you're going to need to go to this gateway to get out to those routes, or like the default route would be an example of that. And then, so there's a lot of different information that can be sent out on these router advertisements, and it's just whatever you have set up the router to send out as options on these router advertisements. So the idea behind IPv6 is everything needs to be dynamic, and things are dynamically changing. So things can constantly update and adjust. So part of this is there are going to be periodic updates that are going to be sent out. And so every once in a while, it'll send out a new router advertisement, so all devices are going to get that. So it's going to be a router advertisement that's just going to go out every now and then and update all of the devices so they have the most current information, which is one reason why any device on the network, if it asks for the information, it will not just send it to that one device, but it will send it out to all of the other devices, because it needs to send out a periodic update anyways. So that's exactly what it does, is it sends out these periodic updates. Well, there you have it. There is neighbor discovery protocol and how it affects with the routers communicating with the routers. So what we talked about is, we talked about a little bit about neighbor discovery protocol and multitasking. We took a look at some of those multicasting addresses again. Then we got into the specifics of the router solicitation messages and the router advertisement messages. And then we got into what those periodic updates do. So that is neighbor discovery protocol when it comes to router solicitation and router advertisements. Thanks for watching my videos. If you like them, could you hit that like button, because it really helps me out.